Well, we are back. That was the first and probably the only presidential debate of this election season. Good evening, friends. And again, welcome back. My name is Liz Porquet-Lassagne. I am the managing director of Word in Black, and here late at night with my esteemed colleague, Joe Williams.
I'm Joe Williams, and I'm the deputy managing director of Word in Black. And what a night. It was really something. There was a lot of hype around this debate, and it seemed, in my opinion, to deliver. A lot of verbal punches thrown, a lot of points made, a lot of points scored, but most of them seemed to be on Kamala Harris's side. Liz, what was your impression?
Well, other than they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, needing to be like an SNL skit at some point. I mean,
so it's gonna be. Yeah, it's gonna be.
It's got to be. She definitely had him on the ropes, and she got under his skin completely. And but it was also nice to see them really getting into some of the issues and really demonstrating that there are clear divisions between these two candidates. If folks did not know that already, so we're a Black Media Collaborative, and we have the fortune of being able to access what is happening in our newsrooms and with our reporting teams all across the nation. So we're going to get into some of the dialogue with those folks to see what it was that they took away, what the watch parties where they're at, what was the reaction of their audience, because that was a lot. That was a lot. And to the fact checkers out there who were trying to fact check that, there is a lot of unpack with that. So that's for sure. Whew.
Indeed. It was really something. And I think that there's going to be a lot to talk about. So let's kind of jump right in. We are going first to the Amsterdam News.
Yes, New York Amsterdam News with their publisher, Eleanor Tatum. We are so thrilled that she is joining us from New York City. Hi, Eleanor.
Hi there. Really glad to be with both of you.
So glad to have you. So what did you think?
Well, it definitely was some kind of debate. I was listening for it, and I'd heard it brought up, the full page ads that Donald Trump took out during the Central Park 5 or the Exonerated 5 case back in 1989. And bringing that up, was really important, at least to me here in New York, and I think to a lot of New Yorkers, when we think about his disdain, Donald Trump's disdain for Black men, and the fact that he called for the death penalty for the 5 young men that were accused of an attack in Central Park, which they were eventually exonerated of after serving 13 years in prison.
So it seems like that really came close to home, and that was something that really caught the attention of you. But I'm kind of wondering, what's going to be your headline tomorrow if you were to put one on right now based on what you saw this evening?
The Donald lies again.
So that's a good one. That's a good pun.
And what do you think of Kamala Harris's performance? We knew what we were going to get with Donald Trump. Did she make the case that she is presidential material?
Oh, absolutely. We know that she is a litigator. We know that she can speak, and she did a fantastic job. She actually talked about the issues, whereas I do not think that Donald Trump ever actually answered a question that he was asked. Mm-hmm. He always answered something else that vaguely resembled an answer to a question that he formulated in his own head, but not the one that came out of the journalist's mouth. He may ask, the journalist may have asked about one war and he talked about another, but he never directly answered a question. And she actually answered the questions that were asked of her.
What do you think is the number one sort of policy position that came out of this debate tonight that is going to resonate with New Yorkers?
The number one. Well, I think there's so many, but I think immigration is going to resonate a lot. But I think in very different ways, because New York and this whole country is made up of immigrants. We're all immigrants here in New York, and the lies that Donald Trump has told about immigrants are just abhorrent. And whether it's the new ones that he's saying today about Haitian immigrants and
the dogs eating dogs, that's
I didn't even want to say it because I don't want to
legitimize.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or the ones that he's saying about the fact that immigrants are more apt to commit crimes, which is also not true. We know that they actually are less likely to commit crimes than the rest of the population. And so, we look at New York City and we have a lot of immigrants here. We have a lot of migrants here. We have problems when it comes to those issues, but it's not of their doing. It is because of the circumstances that are at hand. And we have to find solutions to it. But those are on the city level as well as on the federal level. And everyone has to work together. And I am confident that when a good president comes into power, that those solutions will happen. Now, if President Donald Trump becomes president again, I think there will be blood on the streets.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Publisher Tatum. We appreciate all the hard work that you do. And I really do want to see if that headline is going to be on the paper tomorrow, because, it was, like I said, the fact checkers had their work cut out for them, because, there was a lot of... We appreciate you. Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, and now next up, we're going to go to Charm City, just up the road where I am in suburban Washington, D.C. And every time I see this paper, I keep thinking of the old phrase that I heard when I was a child in the radio ads, because it was in the Afro. So let's bring in Alexis Taylor from the Afro in Charm City of Maryland. Alexis, good to see you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what are your reactions to what you just saw?
Liz, you know that there were so many things to unpack from this debate, but one thing that I can say, I was glad that they started off with the economy. And I'll tell you why. There are so many issues at stake in this election. You got climate change, you have healthcare, immigration. We know what the big ticket items are. But I think that in this election, it's important to think about where the candidates are on those issues, to take action with your vote. However, it's hard to think and take action when you're hungry. It's hard to really think about climate change and, why the storms are coming harder and with more frequency. It's hard to think about why it's raining when you don't have shelter from the rain. And so I was glad that they started off talking about the economy. I was glad that they talked about closing the wealth gap, bringing up all of those issues, because, it's important to know where they are, but it's also important to know where they are in their plan. And I think what we saw here tonight is that Kamala Harris does have a more solid plan when it comes to the economic side of things than what we heard from former President Donald Trump tonight. I was appreciative of the details that she did share and how she wants to close the economic wealth gap, how she wants to invest in families with young children, the investments into small businesses and the investments into the home ownership. Mm-hmm. And so, the details is what I'm looking for. I don't like it when it's a debate and we get into name calling and we get bogged down into he said, she said. Like, I need details. I need to know, what have you been thinking about to put in place on day one? What have you been thinking about?
And so you pretty much heard what you expected to hear. Did you hear what you needed to hear from Kamala Harris? I mean, we know Donald Trump has been in the Oval Office before, but did you hear things that made you see Kamala Harris as a president? And did you hear enough of those details to convince you that she is?
I think that on the detail end, there's always room to know more. But I did hear more from Kamala, and I did, at the end of the debate, I did see her more in that president role. When it comes to who's the better candidate, I mean, it's clear who the better candidate is. And I think of all the independent voters, the undecided voters, the people who are still up in the air about who they're going to choose. When it comes to who has a plan to fix some of these big ticket items that are issues that are plaguing middle and lower class, it's Kamala Harris. The question isn't who is the better candidate. We know who the better candidate is. Every time that they asked Donald Trump for a plan tonight, I only heard one plan, and that was when he spoke about the tariffs. Every other time that they asked him about a plan, and mind you, he spoke about the tariffs in regards to the economic, helping people economically. But I love that David Muir came right back and said, okay, but experts have said that that's going to put a burden on American people. So, that was the only plan we heard from Donald Trump tonight. Everything else, he went around it. He changed the subject like he normally does, and it's clear he does not have a plan. But as far as Kamala Harris, yes, I did hear some things that I personally am interested in. I want to buy a house. I want to have children. And so the $6,000 for the first year of life for a new baby, absolutely, I'm behind it. $25,000 for a down payment for a home, I'm behind it. And so, what I encourage people to do is look at what Kamala Harris has done, look at her record. And if you don't know what her record is, go to afro.com, because we have covered the things that she's done while she has been in office. We've covered.
Yeah, you need to go to afro.com anyway to check it out and see what they're kind of covered. Sorry, we have to leave it there, Alexis, but it's great seeing you again, as always. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you
for having me.
See you soon. All right. Up next, we have our friends that aren't too far away from the folks at the Afro, the Washington Informer. We have Juan Ben Jr., managing editor of the Howard University Hilltop. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super, super happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Okay, so one question that I have that I wanted to ask Alexis, but you are in the area as well. You all just had a shooting at a high school in the DMV, right? And yet one thing that VP Harris said was that both she and, Walz are both gun owners, and they have no intention of taking anyone's guns away. How do you think that's going to play with your readership, given, the fact that there's just the shooting there, given the levels of gun violence that our communities in the DMV are seeing?
Yeah, so I tuned into the debate from a debate watch party on Howard University's campus. And this was a room filled with hundreds of students who were eager to see Vice President Kamala Harris, an alum of this university, and face up against Donald Trump on the world stage. And one thing I talked to many students in the room. We had reporters from the Hilltop talk to many students in the room. And one thing that kept up repeatedly that they were eager to hear either candidate speak about was gun control and gun rights. And this comes not only after this shooting that happened at a high school in Maryland, but the shooting that we saw last week in Georgia that took the lives of 2 teachers and 2 students at that school. And, I think that students, they really want to see a politician really advocate for their lives and for their safety. Like I said, I'm in this room talking to students. These are college students, many of whom remember just 5 years ago or just 6-7 years ago, being in high school and being remembering Parkland and remembering, school shootings that have happened. And so I think this is a generation that is really, really eager and looking to hear a politician really, really take a strong stance and make a case.
Do you think you heard what you needed to hear from Vice President Harris to feel that security? And what was the reaction in the room when she did say that she owned a weapon?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest. I did step away from the debate watch party at the very end to get ready for this broadcast, and so I did not hear her words or hear how the room reacted to it. But I will say that I know that, like I said, students that I did talk to, they wanted to hear someone take a strong stance on this issue.
Mm-hmm. And you're also a member of the generation that's going to leave college, maybe with 6 or 7 figures trailing behind you in debt. A lot of the discussion, or much of the discussion, was about student debt. Did you hear what you needed to hear? And who do you think has the better plan to help young people tackle student debt and help them graduate college to a good job and even make college affordable over the long haul?
Well, I think, young people, we know who has delivered at least some on student debt, and that is Kamala Harris under the Biden administration. Over the past few years, we've seen millions of dollars being wiped away from student debt. But, I will say, like I said, like what little Petter says, I'm managing editor of our student newspaper, and we've done a lot of reporting on what students think about student debt. And a lot of students, current students feel that, that the debt that's currently being wiped away, it's not really touching them. It's not really affecting them. And when they graduate, it's probably not going to either. Lots of the student debt removal policies that we're seeing are directly impacting people who have had debt for quite a while and who are lower on the income scale. And that's not truly affecting students who are in school right now and who are going to be graduating and going to have to start paying back their student loans pretty soon after they graduate. And so, I think students, they definitely, they want a candidate who's going to deliver to them directly. And I'm not sure exactly if we heard that tonight.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you were going to go to press tonight, what's going to be your lead? What's your headline coming out of the debate?
Oh gosh. Well, I think my headline might be something along the lines of, Kamala Harris wants to. Gosh, you put me on the spot.
Sorry.
I don't know if I could give you a headline, but what I think I can give you is my big takeaway from the night, and that I think would be what I go into print night or whatever with, and that would be Kamala Harris. A couple times she's talked about how Donald Trump. We're just hearing him. This is just another word from the same tired playbook. And when I was in that room, it was very clear to me that many of the students in that room really feel that. Every chance he got, he would bring up immigration. Every chance he got, he would spew another lie about the election or about Kamala Harris and Vice President Walz's, plans on abortions and different things like that. And I think this country, and I think that room that I was in, students are very, very tired of that. And I think that, they're ready for a change. And so I think that that's what I would leave with.
Well, that's excellent analysis for Spot News. So give you an A. Thanks very much, Juan Ben Jr. of the Howard University Hilltopper, one of the finest newspapers on college campuses. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So nice to have the next generation of reporters represented there. Thank you so much, Washington Informer, for that. And up next, we have Patrick Washington from the Dallas Weekly. We're so happy to have you here, Patrick. So what's your takeaway? What is your headline for tomorrow?
My headline? Oh, I'd leave that to the people who make headlines. But let's see. I don't know.
Well, did you hear what you needed to hear? Did you see Kamala Harris as presidential material? A lot of people were talking about their doubts about getting to know her. People didn't know her. They wonder if a woman can be president. Did she seem presidential to you?
I mean, she's always had that. I mean, I think that's been sort of the pillar of her career. I don't think I didn't hear anything that I wasn't expecting to hear from either person. I was really actually thinking it was a lot more tame than it was going to be a lot more wild than it was. So I felt like Vice President Harris did a fantastic job of, let's call them Donald Trump's points, really just addressing those and really sort of giving the vibe that they're pointless. And all these fake facts he had, she really did a great job of presenting actual factual information plus a plan and then condemning him for being a, she never said liar, but when she brought up his, when she counted all of his statements, it really did confirm, like, you are a liar. Like, we know this. You're the AR-15 of lies, right? Like, you just keep spraying, right? And so it was like, that was what I thought she did a fantastic job at. In that, she was very presidential. Unlike the last debate we saw, she was able to address almost every, toxic point, every stupid thing, and every, just basic falsehood that he said, and was also presenting her own policies, ideas, which I think was on her part very good in a strategy, because that has been a big criticism of her. Even when she was a vice president, it was like, what are you doing? And, what's your strat? What's your policy? Now she's been able to very, very clearly articulate in several different areas what those are going to be and how they're going to be different from previous administrations, et cetera.
Now, one question I have for you, Patrick, is there was obviously a ton of conversation, everything about immigration and also legal, illegal, all of that sort of stuff, which is, affecting the entire nation, but obviously affects you all differently in Texas. And of course, the insinuation from Trump that Latino immigrants are taking Black jobs, right? What's your reaction to that? Or what is that conversation looking like in Dallas right now?
The immigration conversation in Dallas isn't far beyond like just, we want more of a liberal approach to immigration policy. That's pretty much Dallas. Texas is a different story. Mm-hmm. Texas is very much a red state. And then we have a vile governor who is just hell-bent on proving that humanity isn't worth, protecting while he does that stuff. So there's a lot of disagreement on how that is happening. The general consensus is something needs to happen about immigration across the border. From what I've heard from people I know who are basically involved in it, the rhetoric around immigration has always been consistently negative and stereotypical. That is always going to be something that is going to have to be combated because, as we heard many times, like the stats, the things presented about immigration, about crime, and all that are all lies. So it really is about, who believes these lies and who understands they are lies. And unfortunately, in Texas, there is a very powerful machine, a propaganda machine on several major issues. Immigration, guns, and abortion are pretty much consistently in the conversation.
So drill down on the immigration thing a little bit deeper, though. Black jobs. How's the conversation going in the Black community about that?
No one there Black jobs. Like, the immigration is taking Black. Like, what does that mean? We have a lot of Latino. We're predominantly Mexican based. Here in Texas, it's been history. That is construction, hard labor. Certain house care. These kind of things. We're always asking, like, whose job is that? Like, because Black folk have lawyers, engineers, doctors, they're civil servants, bus driver. Like, what job is a Black person not able to get because an immigrant got it, right? And that's the kind of thing, like, nobody understands this particular argument in this predict. It is just offensive. I think every Black person's like, what are you talking about? It's even doubly here because, like, we have a huge immigrant economy, right? Like, it is well known. Like, I don't walk into restaurants that don't have Mexicans in them. Like, it's not something you do. It's like, that doesn't make sense. And plus we have a new Southeast Asian immigration, swell here that has become very positive with just cultural exchange. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand this argument. I think this is a very targeted propaganda piece. This is not.
Nope.
It's like a Black conservative. It's like, this is not for us. This is for, like, people to say, look, them too.
Well, unfortunately, we have to stop you there and leave it for the moment. But Patrick Washington, really great to get your insights from the Dallas Weekly. Great talking to you.
Thank you so much, y'all.
Thank you so much. So up next, we have the Sacramento Observer joining us.
Yep.
I'm Wilhelmina. Hello, Brandon. We are here at the historic Black Honors College at Sac State, where we gather with a couple of students to watch the debate. We're here with Dr. Luke Wood, the president of Sac State, and students Miriam and Miracle. Dr. Wood, could you share with us your what you thought about the debate tonight?
Well, I thought it was a lot of verbal jabs back and forth. In many ways, it was almost like a fight. I think that Vice President Harris held her own and was able to show her perspectives and where she's coming from in terms of her policies. I thought that President Trump, did not seem as lucid, and I thought it was a difficult debate for him. But I also think that it was a good conversation, though it was tough to watch.
I really respected thoughtful and calm Kamala Harris was throughout the whole debate, and she really laid out a lot of solutions to like some problems plaguing the United States. And I feel like that's what we need most importantly. And also having her as the next president is really going to uplift our society, in my opinion. Well, I believe that she really did great, Miss VP Kamala. She really did amazing. And the thing that stood out to me was when she said she's here to uplift everyone and not just, put us down, which was really amazing. And I felt like Trump was really like talking more about, his plan for us as a community. So I feel like, you should get more into that. And I felt like Ms. Kamala, did great about everything.
And then, is there anything within the debate tonight you wish would have been discussed more, or expanded on, or is there anything that was missing?
Well, we're at a university, so obviously education is important to us, and that was definitely not part of the conversation at all. They talked at the very beginning about opening up around the economy being the most important issue that voters are talking about. But the number one driver of a healthy economy is a healthy education system. It is the best engine for economic development, and it wasn't even part of the conversation tonight. So I thought that was incredibly lacking and something I'm looking forward to hearing more of in the future.
Thank you all so much. Back to you all.
Thank you so much, Sacramento Observer. We're so glad to be able to have, again, the next generation of young Black.
They did a really nice job. And it is important to get the next generation's comments because they are going to be a really crucial demographic in this election. Everybody's talking about it. Harris has gotten a lot of enthusiasm among young college-age voters. There were some discussions of college debt, but yeah, he's absolutely right. There was not a lot of drilling down on education. We didn't hear a lot of specific plans on how they would address these kinds of issues.
All right. Up next, we have the Chicago Defender, my hometown, in the house.
The Chi.
Here. So what's your reaction? What did you think about what you heard tonight?
Since it's football season, I can't help but be compelled to think about the old football coach who could not adapt his playbook to his current opponent. And that's what I saw here with former President Trump. From the outset, Vice President Harris established herself as the aggressor. We saw that with the handshake, her coming over to him. And what it really amounted to me was it was the bully being bullied here throughout.
Right. Just when you say that, do you think you heard what you needed to hear? And in the context of this debate, was there enough specific proposals for Black America between these two candidates?
I absolutely did not hear enough. And I think that was maybe the travesty in all of this, is that it became more of a back and forth of attacks, right? A lot of them baseless as well. So we didn't hear enough, as the gentleman who was on before me, talk about the student loan debt issue, which impacts African Americans at a disproportionate rate. We didn't hear enough about even the climate crisis, I would call it, and each candidate's plans to address this problem with, as you know, in our community, is impacting us also at a disproportionate rate. Even though it's impacting everyone, our communities, especially here in Chicago, are being deeply impacted by climate change issues.
Right.
I know your new mayor, Brandon Johnson, has really, adopted a very green platform for that all across the city, which is, so needed, like you're saying. What do you think, though? The other thing that I think about that I've heard lots of my family members in Chicago talking about is the issue of migrants and feeling like folks are getting resources when they come to Chicago that Black folks who've grown up there have not been receiving for years and years and years. Do you think that Trump's remarks along those lines are going to resonate with Black voters in the city?
Honestly, there is some sentiment about that. I do a radio show locally here where we get callers, and that's expressed a lot. How come new arrivals are receiving rental assistance? They're receiving shelter. What about the generations of people who've been homeless here, mostly Black, in the city of Chicago? How come they're not getting the assistance? And so I think that that's a very credible argument with members of our community who feel like for years that they've been overlooked.
Now, given that the crisis was, in a sense, an artificial one, and by that I mean you have people, governors in southern border states, really importing migrants to the city. Is that more on the agenda of Black Americans talking about immigration? We had a previous guest from Dallas talking about Black jobs. Do you think that part of the rhetoric is hitting home, especially in the context of having migrants getting resources and longtime Black American residents really aren't?
So it is hitting home, but it's a spurious argument. And that's the travesty in all this. As Mayor Johnson says, in terms of the migrant crisis or the new arrivals here that have flooded our city, this is a federal problem. This is a federal issue, right? So with that said, there is a perception that has a lot of credibility in some people's eyes that they are getting preferential treatment. But I would say that I would compel people to also investigate deeply. There are services that exist for people if you are, if you lack affordable housing in the city of Chicago, if you are unhoused in the city of Chicago. There are organizations that have been on the ground for generations helping people. So I think the message has been skewed. There's not enough clear communication about the programs that actually do exist that have been helping people who look like me for years.
Sure. Absolutely. The other thing, of course, that has been brought up was that education was not discussed, like it should have been. And of course, in Chicago, it's been one of those cities where dozens and dozens of schools have been closed, where there's the whole system of you have to, if you want to get into Peyton versus, getting into one of the other schools, the divisions that you have there along racial and economic lines. What would you have wanted to hear from the candidates tonight that would address that? I know, right? It's
well, and I'm saying wow because this is such a hyper local issue in the city of Chicago with the Chicago's Teachers Union, which is one of the most powerful unions in the country. The whole idea of really looking at examining these magnet schools is how do we right the wrongs of disparity that's gone on in cities like Chicago for years, where Black students have not been getting their fair share, access to resources, even having librarians in the school, right? And so I think that I'd like to hear candidates talk about that. How do you enrich the public school system so that it benefits everyone?
Right. Well, that's a very prescient note on which to close this particular conversation. Takuma Roback of the Chicago Defender. Great talking to you. Thanks very much for your insight.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Amir Shah from the Atlanta Daily World. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic. We're so happy to see you. So given, everything that has court case-wise happened in Georgia, what was your reaction to the debate?
Yeah, I'm actually here at a debate party here in Atlanta at a movie theater. And it was a packed house, and you could just hear the people, the enthusiasm of it. Anytime, BP Harris had a lot of one-liners, and she did what we call checked Trump on several occasions. And it was interesting that Trump did bring up Fani Willis, which she is indicted on a RICO case down here for attempting to steal the election in 2020. And I wanted them to kind of hone in on that, which they didn't. But I wish that they would have kind of discussed those cases a bit more because, especially down here in Georgia, with the 2020 election interference case, it's major, and they have them on record attempting to get 11,000 votes, over 11,000 votes. So I wish that would have been highlighted a bit more during the debate.
Now you're in a swing state. I'm assuming that you're seeing ads every 5 minutes portraying Trump as this and Harris as that. Did you hear what you needed to hear to make? I mean, I think that it's pretty much clear that a lot of the Black majority in Atlanta will go for Vice President Harris, but did you hear what you needed to hear? And do you think what you heard will be able to sway a lot of the Atlanta undecided voters?
Well, I think it was a clear distinction of two candidates tonight. It was one person who seems prepared for the job, and one person who's just not serious. As she called him, an unserious man. I mean, he created some lie about pets being eaten, and it was just chaos. It was just like, what are you talking about? And I think the American people will see that there's a clear contrast. And so I think, particularly for individuals in swing states and individuals who are undecided, I think this debate pretty much, laid the foundation of what's at stake. VP Harris, she talked a lot about the future. She talked a lot about what's going to be next. Trump didn't really give any policies. He mostly blamed the Biden and Harris administration for what's happening now. That was basically his biggest talking point, was to blame. He didn't really give insight of what he would do.
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties.
To me, that was a major issue.
Yes.
One question that I have for you is, there has been plenty of controversy over the past year or so over Cop City being built in Atlanta, with so many people being against it. And of course, the argument that Kamala Harris is the top cop and, arrested dozens and dozens and dozens of Black men. How do you think her record as Attorney General, as someone who, was elected to uphold the law in that way, is playing given the controversy over Cop City?
Yeah, well, I think it's a misnomer that she was, locking up Black men. I think that's just a fact. Well, that's just something that's not factual, and it's been perpetuated a lot. If you go back on her record, you can see that she actually created programs, divergent programs, one of the first in the state of California, for individuals who had drug issues. And so we have to really, not perpetuate those lies. In terms of what's happening here in Cop City, that's an environmental issue. It's an issue of gentrification in certain communities. That's an issue that's really hyper local. And so I don't know if Harris's record really is connected to anything that's happening directly with Cop City. But also, I wish that they would have kind of talked about the shooting that occurred here, close to Atlanta. That occurred last week, and they didn't really talk about that. That's a major issue, a school shooting where a 14-year-old kid, bought an automatic rifle into a school and just opened fire. And not one word was mentioned during the debate about that school shooting. And so I think it's a national crisis. Of course, VP Harris talked about, herself being a gun owner. But again, there's a lot of policies in terms of gun laws that, especially down here in Georgia, where there's a lack of gun laws. And so anyone just go into a gun shop and buy a gun without any license or anything of that nature. So I wish they would have talked a little bit more about that, because that's a major issue, and it just occurred last week.
All right. Very much so. Very much so. Well, A.R. Shaw of the Atlanta Daily World, thank you so much for your insight, and we appreciate you taking time out to talk to us.
Thank you.
Well, coming up next, we have Aswad Walker from the Houston Defender.
Aswad.
Houston
Defender.
How are you doing? What do you think? Have you recovered from that? For what you saw?
I'm still trying to come down, because my first thought was the moderators did a much better job this go round than last go round, but still there's this willingness to allow Trump to bully them to death. And I mean, I was in an auditorium full of folk who are watching the debate and wanted to scream every single time, because they just allow this. The thing I thought about was, this is just him. He has absolutely no regard for any rules, any laws. But the thing is, his entire life, he's been able to get away with it.
Right. Well, that's very much present. We kind of got what we knew we would get with Donald Trump. Flip the script and talk about Vice President Harris. I mean, you were in a room full of people. What were the reactions inside the room? And do you think you saw and heard what you needed to see and hear in order for her to be the next president of the United States?
Well, I didn't even need to see the debate to know that she needs to be the next president of the United States. But what I heard was people really felt when she stood her ground, when you can call it going low, you can call it defending yourself, whatever you want to call it. She was willing to call a spade a spade. And there was this one moment in the debate where she said, "This dude," and there was this dramatic pause, and everyone was filling in the blanks with all the MFs and everything else that she was probably calling him in her mind. And just, the room erupted. And every time she called him out on a lie and backed it up with facts, the room went crazy. And I guess just to answer your question, I appreciated the fact that she was willing to do that, and all the while seeking to turn the page, as she would say. The American people want to move forward. They don't want this same clown show. They don't want this same madness, because really that was all he was giving. Whenever he would ask a question, he would just go back to his consistent dog whistles. And I thought one of the most powerful lines was what she said early in the debate. She said that under with Trump, we're talking about the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War. I was like, damn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she most definitely went there. Do you think you're in a red state, obviously, not a whole lot of blue dots there. Do you think, in hearing what you're hearing, did she talk to Black America and talk about the concerns that we have as a community, or in enough detail to move the needle? And secondly, do you think this debate will move the needle with the general public? I mean, it's neck and neck so far. Is the narrative going to change based on this debate?
I'm not sure if there's going to be a lot of change regarding the general public. And I really do not believe that there are any undecided voters out there. I think everyone knows who they're voting for. They're either going to vote or not going to vote. And the undecided, many of them are just ashamed to say they're voting for the racist white nationalists. But in terms of moving the needle, I'm not sure if it moved the needle, because both of them, I thought, did a good job of speaking to who are the folk that are seeking to elect them. My hope and prayer is that if there are any on the margins, that they were willing to see the stark difference between the two candidates. But I'm not sure if that happened. In terms of things I would like to have heard more from Vice President Harris, I would have liked to hear a stronger stance on behalf of the Palestinian people. She did mention that, she was committed to a two-state solution. I would have liked to heard her bring up some level of fight and stance for the poor and the working poor, because they never get anybody's attention. But like Reverend Barber said, anyone that captures that group, that's like a sleeping giant of the electorate that is just being ignored.
Well, we appreciate your insight, Oswald. Always great to see and hear from you. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Next up, we have from the Michigan Chronicle, Jeremy Allen.
Jeremy Allen, good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Good evening. Glad to see you guys.
So give me your first impressions of what you saw.
My first impressions were that, Kamala came into the debate knowing what she wanted to accomplish. I think it was pretty clear that she knew that Donald Trump would show his cards pretty early and pretty often about how disingenuous he is, and how he's been spewing a lot of lies to his low education voter demographic. And I think she did a very good job at allowing him to showcase the things that he's been spreading at all of his rallies and across the country to a larger audience tonight.
Well, also, you're another one that we've talked to in a swing state. Give us the view from that swing state. Do you think Michigan is now going to lean towards Kamala Harris, or is it still very much going to be up in play based on this debate tonight?
I don't think the debate is really what moved the needle. I think this year we've seen Kamala Harris visit Michigan on 6 different occasions. She's been campaigning specifically in Detroit very hard. She's got a great ally in the United Auto Workers, who carry a strong base, not just in southeastern Michigan, but all across the state. She's been checking the boxes with unions all across the state. I think what people were looking for here in Southeastern Michigan was what she hit the nail on the head with when she spoke about opportunity economies. You know, here in Detroit, we're really reliant on a historic, affordable living area, right? And that's all across the Midwest, really. But she tapped into that, talking about bringing back affordable healthcare, continuing to bring down the cost of groceries and housing. And I think that's really what people are looking for. I think what'll really be the determining factor over these next 50 plus days is how she can show that she can do that, as opposed to just saying that she can do that.
She also really hit him with the Affordable Care Act, which is obviously of great importance as far as, you know, making sure that more Black folks and more people in general have health insurance that they need. How do you think where the debate went on that issue is going to play for people in Michigan?
I think it's a huge issue. We're very underinsured. And, you know, Detroit specifically, our proximity to Canada, it's already been proven that a lot of people will drive, 15 minutes to 30 minutes right across the border for more affordable healthcare in another country. And so I think it's, that the people here have a propensity to seek out more affordable options. So I think keeping the ACA on the table as an option for not just Michiganders, but Americans, and ensuring that the cost is low and the quality of care is high, that's something that people in Michigan here are continuously seeking out. And I think, again, she did speak to her commitment to those issues. And those are things that that have continuously resonated with Michiganders on our continued visits to Michigan this year. And I think they'll continue to do so, again, over these last 8 weeks of campaigns.
Now, what do you make of her responses on the Palestinian question? Our last guest, Oswald Walker from Houston, was talking about how he'd like to have heard her say a little bit more about the Palestinians, about the plight of the poor. She didn't go there. She also reiterated a very strong stance towards Israel. What do you make of those answers, and do you think those answers are what people will accept in Michigan, which is home to one of the largest Palestinian populations of the country?
Yeah, Michigan, southeastern Michigan, is home to the largest Arab community in the country, in the world, outside of the Middle East. And that's really been a hot button issue every time she's come. Even President Biden, during his visits, all of their rallies have been interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters who have been yearning for the president and the vice president to be more impactful about their calls to a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. I pretty intently watch Black Twitter and local Detroit Twitter during, live events like this. And I did see some outrage from some of the Middle Eastern community, Palestinian community here in southeastern Detroit, if for nothing more, they wanted Vice President Harris to respond to Donald Trump's allegations that she hates Palestinians. And I think her failure to do that left a lot of people feeling uneasy. But what I do think resonated was her call for an end to the war. I think people know that she genuinely wants this to come to an end. I think she genuinely, and I think people understand that she genuinely believes that both, residents of both Israel and Palestine have the right to defend themselves. But the way that they've gone about it, which she articulated, is not humane. And so I think even saying that has left a good impression upon the Arab community here in southeastern Michigan.
One question I have for you, there was some talk about, the environment there. And of course, given, the automakers, the industry there in Detroit, this is, of course, a hot topic there. How do you think this transition to clean energy is playing out, and the championing of clean energy from, a potential Harris administration is going to play with voters there?
I think it's going to be well received by so many people. There are, I don't think the auto workers are concerned about a transition to electric vehicles, putting a stop to their workforce and how they continuously evolve. as an economic driver here in the state of Michigan. So I think, air quality and environmental justice are huge concerns for people in Michigan. And I think moving to a more environmentally friendly economic system for progression and for opportunities for Michiganders is going to be very well received.
Well, that's a good note on which to end, and we hope that that's plays out. Jeremy Allen of the Michigan Defender, Michigan Chronicle. So very nice to have you with us. Apologies, it's a long night, but very nice to have you with us, and thanks very much for your insight.
Thank you guys both.
Thank you for joining us. Up next, we have Donnell Suggs from the Atlanta Voice. Welcome, Donnell. Where are you? Can you hear
Good
it?
evening. How y'all?
Yes.
I can. Yes, I can.
Fantastic. You're at a debate watch party right now?
No, I am in Philadelphia where the media is at the Philadelphia Convention Center, and the debate was a half a mile away over at the Constitution Center.
Okay. Were you in the overflow room or the spin room?
Spin room. Spin room is now an overflow room at this point because everyone is down here, and allegedly, former President Trump might stop by.
Paint a picture for us. What are you seeing right now?
Well, we have. It's spin room time now, where people are walking around with signs with certain folks' names on it, and then they're all stopping talking to the media. I'll just throw a couple names out there: Laura Trump, Gavin Newsom, Anthony Scaramucci. I talked to Senator Tim Scott, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone's making their rounds, talking to the media about their reactions to what they just saw about a half an hour ago.
Now, what are you hearing in the spin room? I mean, is it dominated by the fact that one side or the other thinks that they took the prize, and who's making the biggest impression? Can you hear us?
I can. And no, and I heard your question. I'm hearing, okay, we will use Tim Scott as an example. He's still towing the party line. He did credit Vice President Harris for standing up during this debate and then obviously having a better debate than President Biden had a couple months ago. But he still felt like when I asked him if former President Trump hurt himself or helped himself, he said he helped himself. That's one of the few people that told me that. Most folks are telling me that she won this round. It felt like she kind of came out, stuck to the topics, was very poignant about what she wanted, didn't necessarily answer anything about abortion. She kind of skipped over that. But other than that, she felt like she was the one that kind of kept this thing afloat, whereas former President Trump went all over the place. I'm hearing that. Again, I'm not hearing that a ton from Republicans, but I am hearing that a ton from people here.
Now, one thing that, we're seeing is that Trump and his surrogates feel that the moderation was very unfair. What is your reaction to that?
I can't imagine why they would feel that way. I thought both David Muir and the young lady's name I'm forgetting right now did fantastic. I thought they kind of kept them on point and gave them a minute to rebuttal and then jump right back into it. So I can't imagine why they would.
Another question.
It felt fair to me. It really did.
In the closing statement,
and much more organized than what happened at CNN.
Well, that's good. In the closing statements, VP Harris focused on the future. How did that, how do you think that plays with folks back in Atlanta? I think that we have a little bit of a delay.
Well, for my story, I kind of used the boxing analogy, being in Philly and all, about how she had a chance to throw a couple more punches at the end, and he didn't. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've got you.
Yeah. Long story short, in my story, I kind of piggybacked on the fact that she ended with a positive message, whereas he ended in an attack on her and a semi-complaint, and he talked about how terrible the country is. Again, if this is the last, and that last 2 minutes is all you heard, you wouldn't vote for someone that tells you this country is in shambles, it's terrible, and everything's going to hell. You would vote for the person that says, hey, listen, we can start anew. I could be a new chapter. So that's why I made sure to put that in my story, because I felt like she ended it strong where he ended it the same way he started it, complaining.
Mm-hmm. Now, one quick question that I have for you is: you're representing a swing state. What's the view from there? Take us to Georgia. What do you think they're going to be saying tomorrow about this debate?
She's got a massive amount of support in Georgia. I want to stress that so does he. There are parts of Georgia with former President Trump is the only option. That being said, they're not as big as what Vice President Harris is doing. I feel like tonight she might have even won over some people who are on the fence, those independent voters, those folks who kind of don't like. He's always talking about how bad the country is. I think tonight was a great example of her coming out and sticking to topic and saying, hey, listen, enough with the lies and enough with how bad things are. We can change something new. So there's someone out there that was going to the right and might end up going to the left because she was really strong on this. This is night and day. This is 180 from covering the debate in CNN a couple months ago, and the feeling you had right after it was over that the world's going to end. This is 180 from that. So I can't wait to get home and really hear what folks are really going to say about it. But again, I'm on my way to D.C. after this for the Congressional Black Caucus, so that should be interesting. Getting some insider opinion on what happened today.
Do you think she said what she needed to say to reach those voters? Clearly you do.
I do. I felt like she went right to the points and addressed a number of times that she didn't even harp on the fact that he was a 34 count felon. She didn't even harp on that. She only mentioned it once. He mentioned Joe Biden's name 7 times. I counted. Joe Biden's not even debating. He mentioned him 7 times. I think she stayed on point. So if you were wondering who she was or what she stands for, you got some of that today. If you were hoping that he would change a little bit and kind of focus, you did not get that today. You got the same thing. Name calling, talking about Joe Biden was asleep at 4 o'clock. What does Joe Biden have to do with tonight? I don't know, but he did that. So you got the same old Trump today. And if you needed an introduction to Kamala Harris, you got that today. So that's a win. That is a huge win.
Last question for you, Donnell. What do you think Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss are feeling right now?
Yeah.
Vindication almost. Like, man, someone stood up for us directly. Somebody is representing us. Someone that looks like us, by the way, and is representing us. And there's someone out there that understands that we're not going to go back. And that treatment they had, that's going back, being treated that way. And we're not going back. I would love to sit down with them and ask them where they watched this debate, how they felt what was going on, and what they feel for. Because they felt like Kamala Harris was talking for more than just Black people or Black women. She was talking for Americans. Like, we're not doing this anymore. This name calling stuff, this lying about immigrants coming in. He talked about people eating people's pets. What is this? He did it on national TV. And it's like, God, we got it. She rolled her eyes a couple times. I think the country rolled its eyes a couple times. It was like, come on.
Well, I mean, indeed, it was quite a night. And thanks for giving us a wrap. Donnell Suggs of the Atlanta Voice. Really great talking to you. Thanks for your insight.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Of course. Anytime. Well, there we have it. We made it to the end of, like I said, this may be the only debate that we see between, Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We don't know yet if they will agree to another one. But Joe, what's your headline for tomorrow? What's your number one takeaway?
My number one takeaway would be that the bully got bullied, and that Harris clearly stood her ground, had the facts, came with some receipts even, and it was a very impressive performance for someone that people really thought that they didn't know going in. I think they certainly have a better impression of her now. What about you?
The culture war stuff did not work. It just fell flat. We see so much in the mainstream press about, he tried to bring it with saying folks are eating, cats and dogs, with, harping on migrants, all of that sort of stuff, just hammering those issues over and over again. And I think you see, like Donnell said, that the country people are trying to move past that stuff because we have real issues that need real solutions instead of dwelling in this place of attacking each other. The other thing that I saw, of course, tonight is how important and critical the Black press is. hearing these voices from across the country and getting this pulse on what Black folks are thinking about. I don't know if y'all can hear my dog. She agrees.
Drama wants to weigh in. Drama's got strong feelings about this debate.
Black press is on it. But, you know, like just that reality of we are out here, we have such a huge stake in this election, in every single election we do, obviously, and just knowing how hard our ancestors fought for the right to vote, seeing how many people are being disenfranchised from that right to vote across the country, being kicked off of voter rolls, and knowing that all of these reporters and even the young ones that we talk to that are coming up in this profession are covering those stories and speaking to folks and hearing those voices that are not always paid attention to, other than people wanting to find out, do we really think she's Black or not? So, and we're not going down that wormhole because
no. Just no.
No.
Well, that does it for us. Again, I'm Joe Williams. I'm Deputy Managing Director of Word in Black.
I'm Liz Corrigan-Lasonia. I'm Manager Director. And of course, you can always come and visit us at wordinblack.com, read our reporting, and find out all the news about what is happening in America. Have a good night. Y'all be safe.
Good night.